So breaking down tasks, simplifying things is extremely important. But the other thing that we need to be really good at is making decisions about everything, right? How do we decide when we're going to do things, what we are going to do or not going to do, how we're going to tackle them, when we're going to tackle them, all those sorts of things. And the truth is that a lot of times people are making decisions in overly complex ways. So what I want to teach you now is the 3Ds method, something that I usually teach adults in terms of inbox zero, which means managing your email in a really effective way. And if email is relevant to you at this point in your school career or your life, then you can apply this there. But I actually usually use email as a way of teaching better decision making. So that's what I'm going to teach you now: how to make better and more effective decisions. The problem for most people is that when you encounter a possible decision opportunity, people will go through all sorts of different iterations. Oh, how should I do that? Should I do that now? How much of it should I do? Should I start here? Should I do, like, 45 different decisions can go through your brain in a matter of seconds. And what I want you to start to do is focus on just 3 decisions, the 3Ds. So the first D is to delete or decline or deny. It's basically saying no. We need to be better in general about saying no. And you can say no to a task or project that you believe is not going to serve you, is something you're not going to really do well. And of course, if it's something that you don't have to do, you can't just say no to homework, for example. But if it's something where somebody's like, there's, a new soccer team starting up next week and you're already on a soccer team, do you want to join? Maybe you love soccer and you really want to say yes. But if you stop and think about it, is it really the right decision? Is it the best thing for you and your time and your career? And this goes for things too, like even socializing. There's a time and place for socializing. We need to socialize. It's important. And it's something that we actively should be seeking out. But there's going to be times where somebody's like, hey, you have this work that you got to get done, or this big project that you're working on, or some hobby that you really like doing. And somebody says, let's go to the movies. Maybe it's the right thing, but you also have to be able to say, like, no is the right answer right now, because that's not ultimately going to help me do what I'm trying to do. And I have a focus that I want to maintain. So the first D is to say no. The second D is to deal with it right now. So this is a really interesting one, and something that will take some practice, because it might feel like you're going to get pulled in all sorts of different directions. If you can do something right now, and that means like you can do it in the next 2 or 3 minutes without any sort of big mindset shift or like stopping some major thing you're doing, you should deal with it right now, because the idea of later doesn't exist. And I have to say, I think this is probably one of the best gifts I can give you, is to dispel the idea of later. A lot of people like the idea of, I'll deal with it later. I'll get to it later. I'll deal with it when I have a minute. I'll deal with it when I have time. But the truth is that time never comes, right? There's never truly a time when you don't have anything that you need to do, any responsibilities, anything on your mind. And there's this quiet, calm space just waiting for you to show up to do the thing that you said you would do. And what that does is it sort of exacerbates the idea of procrastination. We end up creating this emotional experience where we don't want to deal with something because we don't want to deal with it now. And then we come up on a deadline, it creates urgency, and it creates a lot more stress than it should have in the first place if you had just done it when you had the moment. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if you deal with something right now, even if it's a very small thing, it's very motivating. Anything that we do, any task that we complete, no matter how small, gives us a little bit of a dopamine hit in our brains. It feels good to our brains and we want more of it. And progress begets progress. And then the last thing is if that thing that you need to get done is something that somebody else might be waiting on you for. So let's say you're working on a project with a classmate and they say, I need you to do this research before I can do my part. And you're like, yeah, I'll get to it later. Then you're causing a delay for them, which actually has a really big multiplier effect, right? Because now your delay of an hour or two actually can create a delay of many, many hours for them. Or maybe you have a child to do, and maybe a parent wants you to do the dishes before they can then start cooking dinner if the kitchen isn't clean or something like that. So if you delay that, you create a delay for them and then ultimately for everybody else. So get things done right now that you can get done right now. The third D is the most interesting and in some ways the most complicated. I'm going to teach you about that later on in the calendaring lesson where we talk about peak time. But with the third D is to defer. Okay, so if we can't say no and we can't deal with it right now, then we have to defer it. We have to decide a time when we are going to deal with that thing. This is not the same as saying I'll do it later. This is more like, it's 8 in.the.morning and you're getting ready to go to school and you get an email from a teacher or you see some pop up somewhere on your homework management tool, whatever you're using, that says you have to write a book report. You can't say no. You can't do it right now because you got to go to school. But the typical human response is to say, oh, I'll just deal with it later. And then we have to sort of scramble and find the time, and that just doesn't work. You have to say to yourself, all right, 8 o'clock at night, or you look at your calendar, which again, I'm going to show you later. You say, this is the time I'm free. This is between my soccer practice and dinner with my family, or whatever. This is the time when I'm going to do this project. And that is 5 o'clock, 5 to 6 o'clock. And you block that off your calendar. And now you've made a plan. You've chosen for yourself and you've owned your own time. Because we never find time. We have to make the time. And if you make the time and it's your time and you're controlling your time, you won't be overwhelmed. And even if you get to 5 o'clock and you're like, you know what, I didn't finish the thing I was doing at 4:30 and I actually have something else that's more important, you can reprioritize at that point and say, all right, I'm going to deal with this at 8 o'clock. But it's not later. And the answer may be, I'm going to deal with this 3 days from now at 10 in.the.morning. This is going to be the first thing I do on Saturday when I get up. But you're making a plan and you're being intentional about that plan. So 3 decisions, that's it. No matter what the decision is, those are the only 3 decisions you need to think about for your first interaction. Of course, if somebody says, what color do you want to paint your room? You can't say, the 3 Ds. But initially you could be like, I can't decide about that right now. I'll get back to you at 11 o'clock on this time, whatever it might be. So the 3 Ds: deny, deal with, defer.